Welcome to my tutorial on dividing with two-digit divisors. Sometimes dividing with two-digit divisors can seem a little bit intimidating, but it's the same exact steps as one-digit divisors. Divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and start this problem just like we would start any other problem. We're going to put our parking spaces. The first thing we're going to do is divide. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times can 15 go into 3? 15 cannot go into 3 at all, so we're going to put an X. Our next question is, how many times can 15 go into 37? The only difference between one-digit divisors and two is that we're going to come over to the side and do some multiplication problems. We're not always going to know exactly how many times it goes in. So if we start with 15 times 2, we get 30. And that looks like it's going to be right. I'll go ahead and do 15 times 3 just to show you. 3 times 5 is 15, carry the 1. 3 times 1 plus 1 is 4. 45, and 45 would be too much. So we're going to go ahead with 2. And then we're going to follow through the same steps. Multiply 15 times 2. We just did that, and so we know it's 30. We're then going to subtract, and we're left with 7. Our last step is to bring down, and we're left with 79. We're going to start the process again. How many times can 15 go into 79? Well, I don't have anything close to 79, so I'm going to go ahead up to 15 times 5 to see what I get. 75, and that's going to be the number that I need. So 15 can go into 79 5 times. 15 times 5 is 75. You subtract, and you get 4. You filled all your spaces. There's nothing left to bring down, so you have a remainder of 4. In these types of problems, when we multiply off to the side, we just need to make the best guess that we can at what number we need to multiply. Sometimes we need to go up, sometimes we'll need to go down. You just want to make the best guess that you can. All right, to go ahead and check this problem, we're going to do our Elvis hair. We're going to do 25 times 15. 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. We come down and put our 0. I like to get rid of what I added up there. 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 2 is 2. We add these together. And then we can't forget to add our remainder. And we do end up with 379, so we did the right thing. Let's go ahead and do another example. 1,988 divided by 23. The first thing we're going to do is put our parking spaces. Now we're going to get to dividing. How many times can 23 go into 1? 23 cannot fit into 1, so we put an X and move on to 19. How many times can 23 go into 19? Well, it can't go into 19 either. It's too small, so we're going to go ahead and X that out too. Sometimes you will need 2 X's. Our next question we ask is, how many times can 23 go into 198? Now, I do not know off the top of my head how many times 23 can go into 198. That's when we go over to our side and try to multiply some things out. I'm just going to guess maybe 6 to start with and see where I get. 6 times 3 is 18, carry the 1. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 138. So I'm close, but I'm not close enough. I might skip up. Let's just skip up to 7 to be sure. 7 times 3 is 21, carry the 2. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 is 16. That's pretty close. Let me try 8. 3 times 8 is 24, carry the 2. We have 16 plus 2 is 18, so 184. That's as close as I'm going to be able to get. If I went to 9, 9 times 3 is 27, carry the 2. 18 plus 2 is 20. So 207 is too big. When you're doing these problems, if you're doing them in pencil, remember not to erase them because they may come in handy later. So we know that 23 can fit into 198 8 times. The other good thing about working all these problems out is that you already have the answer to what 23 times 8 is. It's 184. We're going to go ahead and subtract. 8 minus 4 is 4. 9 minus 8 is 1. I want to stop here and point out that sometimes when we're doing double-digit divisors that you will get a 2-digit answer when you subtract, and that's okay. As long as it's lower than the divisor and 14 is lower than 23, you're good to go. After you subtract, you bring down. So we're going to go ahead and bring down our 8. And I'm going to look over here, and it looks like I already have my answer, which is 6. 7 would be 161, and that's too high. So we know that 23 can go into 148 6 times. 6 times 23 is 138. We subtract. 8 minus 8 is 0. 4 minus 3 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So we have 10 left over. I have nothing left to fill. I have nothing left to bring down, so I have a remainder of 10. It's also okay to have a remainder that's a double digit. Again, as long as it's lower than your divisor, you're good to go. Let's go ahead and do one more problem together. 3,402 divided by 32. The first thing we're going to do is put our parking spaces. We're going to start with divide. How many times can 32 go into 3? It cannot, it's too small. How many times can 32 go into 34? 32 can go into 34 one time. 32 times 1 is 32. Subtract, and you're left with 2. We're then going to bring down. We have 20. Then we ask ourselves, how many times can 32 go into 20? 32 cannot go into 20, so we're going to put a 0. Remember, you cannot bring any extra numbers down. You can only ever bring one number down at a time. If it won't fit, just put 0. 32 times 0 is 0. Subtract, and you're left with 20. Bring down the 2. So we need to know how many times can 32 go into 202. I'm going to have to come over to the side. I'm going to multiply some things out to see how close I can get without going over. I'm going to start with 7 and see where I get. 7 times 2 is 14. Carry the 1. 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 1 is 22. So that is too high. So I'm going to go down to 6. 32 times 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 1 is 19. So we have 192, and that's as close as I can get without going over. So 32 can go into 202 6 times. 32 times 6 is 192. We're going to subtract. We get 0. We need to make that a 10, and this a 1, and we're left with 10. We have nothing left to fill. Everything's done, so we have a remainder of 10. Our answer is 106, remainder 10. Let's go ahead and go over the rules to wrap this up. Number 1, follow the same dividing steps that we're used to. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. There's no additional steps. Everything's exactly the same in that regard. Number 2, which is really the only difference, is that we need to multiply off to the side to make sure that we're getting as close as we can to the number without going over. Some extra tips. Be careful when you're subtracting. We often get 2 digits as an answer. And remainders can be 2 digits as long as they're lower than the divisor. And that goes for our answers for subtraction as well. As long as it's lower than the divisor, it's fine. Let's go ahead and get some practice in. Grab a sheet of paper, pause your video, and then in a second, I'll reveal the answers. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.